All right, good evening. I think we're all ready. Estamos listos, ¿verdad? Para empezar. So I'll kick off the meeting in this presentation, and I just want to start by saying a huge thank you to our state senator, Sal Domenico, and our state rep, Judith Garcia, for coming here, right? And sharing what they know about this very exciting project, and most importantly, giving us a chance to learn and ask questions, right? So we're here to speak to each other. I know that it's very early in the process, right? And I think we all know that. So we also have to approach this conversation as that, right? I don't think we know what color the building is going to be, right? Or you know how far away are the traffic signals at this point. It's very early in the process, but having these conversations now are very important. One is to engage our community, and two is to show the project that Chelsea is very excited about this opportunity, right? We are excited about what it's going to bring. We are excited about the tourism. We are excited about the jobs. We are excited about the economic development, right, that it's going to bring. We also need to have, right, some good conversations about how we're going to manage it all. But we start with saying we are very excited for this project. So I'll say it in Spanish, and then I'm going to hand it over to our state delegation. Estamos aquí, ¿verdad? Y empecé dándole gracias al senador y a la state rep por estar aquí. Lo que vamos a hacer hoy es que vamos a aprender, vamos a hablar, vamos a discutir y vamos a hacer preguntas, ¿verdad? Este proyecto, lo que van a presentar es el proyecto del estadio en Everett, un estadio de fútbol, y sabemos que el proyecto está bien temprano, ¿verdad? Ahorita lo que es un sueño, el proyecto es un sueño, ¿verdad? Así que no vamos a tener todas las respuestas hoy, ¿verdad? No sabemos cuál es el color del edificio. No sabemos a dónde específicamente van a estar la carretera, ¿verdad? Pero es importante estar aquí hoy, hacer preguntas, es importante aprender y también es importante de que el proyecto sepa de que la ciudad de Chelsea apoya a este proyecto, ¿verdad? En mi opinión, este proyecto va a traer trabajos, este proyecto va a traer desarrollo económico y este proyecto va a traer el turismo, ¿verdad? De que es algo de que sí va a beneficiar a toda la región. Sí es cierto de que el proyecto, claro, va a traer impactos, ¿verdad? Pero esos impactos se pueden manejar, ¿verdad? Y a través de esta conversación hay que hablar de esos impactos, hay que hablar de cómo se pueden manejar esos impactos, pero es importante empezar con decir de que la ciudad de Chelsea está emocionada de este proyecto y la ciudad de Chelsea apoya a este proyecto. So, thank you, Senator and State Rep, for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Good evening, everyone. My name is Judith Garcia. I am your state representative. I represent Chelsea and a portion of Everett, and I am very honored to be a part of the state delegation. I serve with my dear colleague, State Senator Saul DiDomenico, who will be sharing with you an update of where the project is. Buenas noches a todos, mi nombre es Judy García, soy la diputada de la ciudad de Chelsea y una porción de Everett y tengo el gran honor de servir en la delegación estatal con el senador, un gran compañero, Saul DiDomenico, que brevemente les va a dar una actualización del proyecto. The goal this evening is to give you an update of the Everett Stadium that is being proposed in Everett. Our senator will provide that update, but it's also our goal to hear from you, our constituents, directly. It's a safe space. Please, if you have any ideas, any comments, any strong feelings regarding this project, we are here to hear you. Our senator has been incredible in doing these similar listening sessions in other cities and we were invited to do so here in the city of Chelsea, so we want to thank the city manager. I also want to give a special shout out to City Councilor Leo Robinson, who through his advocacy came to my office and made it very clear that this was very important to him. I also want to acknowledge other councilors that are here in the room, Councilor Todd Taylor, Councilor Kelly Garcia, Councilor Melinda Vega, and Councilor Roberto Jimenez, who is joining us as well. So thank you all for being here. Entonces quiero brevemente explicarles de que hemos tenido sesiones similares a esta, foros comunitarios, no solo en la ciudad de Chelsea, que la tenemos hoy, pero el senador ha también dado muchas rondas escuchando diferentes ciudades y comunidades de cuáles son sus opiniones sobre esta propuesta. Así que quiero no solo agradecerle al gerente de la ciudad por darnos la bienvenida aquí en Chelsea, sino también al concejal Leo Robinson, que hizo mucha abogacía para asegurarnos de que Chelsea también tuviera la oportunidad de ser escuchado. También se acaba de reunir con nosotros el concejal Calvin Brown, who has joined us. Thank you, Calvin Brown, for joining us. So now that being said, thank you so much for being here. I will hand off the mic to our dear senator, who will provide an update, and then hopefully we will hear from all of you after your update. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you, Fidel. And to everyone who came out tonight, we're happy to see so many people here tonight with us. I'm going to just briefly explain the legislation, how it was written, and then go into some of the slides to show you some of the renderings of what is here today, what is proposed to come hopefully in the near future, and how we get there. So this has been going on for several years now. I believe it's been almost 3.5 years, almost 4 years when we started this process. As you know, on the waterfront in Everett, they announced it's a power plant that has been decommissioned. So the power plant is sitting there, still contaminating our water, our land, our air, as well as a lot of nasty stuff on that land right now. The Kraft Group approached the city of Everett, and Everett approached the Kraft Group, depending on who you talk to. I don't know who did it first, but they came together. And this site was talked about for possibility of putting a 25,000-seat soccer stadium on this land. Now, this land itself today is very contaminated. One of the nastiest brownfields in the entire state, sitting on the waterfront with no real hope of being cleaned up by anyone. There's no white knight coming to our rescue to take down this monstrosity that's sitting there right now. It'll cost up to $80 million to take that building down and clean up that land. And just for comparison's sake, across the street from this site is the casino. And the casino was sitting on Monsanto land. Monsanto was a big chemical company that made their home in Everett for decades, and then just walked out on the city and left the brownfield behind with no recourse for the community. And like Chelsea, Everett would fight against these big corporations, but unfortunately they would run it out in the court system, and they had all the money and time on their hands, so they would just run it out until the communities gave up, because it would cost them more to keep going. So the land where Monsanto was, where the casino is today, was vacant for 30 plus years, actually 40 years, with no taxes, no revenue generation, no jobs, just a dirty piece of land. And we saw this as the next albatross around the neck of our community, meaning that there is no one else coming to clean up this land, unless you find a developer that's going to be doing something like that at their own expense. So we came together with the environmental groups. The environmental groups are very much involved in the beginning of this process. I brought them all to that site. We actually walked right here. We walked this whole area right here. We walked through this building, and that was a big mistake, because when you walk through that building and you see little beams of light coming through the holes in the ceiling, you can see what you are breathing in. The particles in that building should not be exposed to open air, and they won't be when it comes down. But that's how dirty the building is. Even walking through is a health hazard. So So I brought them to the site, we came up with some sort of rough framework where they were gonna work with the crafts to come up with lifting a DPA. So this land right now sits in a designated port area. So the DPA means maritime use only. And what you see here also extends all the way into Chelsea, to the Chelsea Creek. That whole area on the waterfront, from here into Chelsea, is a restricted area, which means,
I'm sorry, Senator, we have some Spanish speakers.
Yes, we have interpretation.
Translation, if we can get
We had
some
somebody here.
translation. That would be helpful. I know you said a lot, but I want to make sure the brothers understand what you're
you
saying.
gonna do it from there?
Thank you.
The only ones that, everyone else is okay?
Thank you.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, the DPA, which is a designated port area, restricts development on that land. So maritime use only, so it can be something like a power plant, it can be something like a shipyard, it can be something that's gonna have some sort of water use. That restricts it to the point where you can't really develop much of anything on that land other than industrial, heavy industrial use on our waterfront. So literally that power plant's been sitting there for 100 years with no access to the waterfront for the public. And in many places like Chelsea, the same exists as well today. So it is very difficult, very, very difficult to lift a DPA in any part of the state. There are only 11 of these across the entire Commonwealth. They're very protected because people want the maritime use. They don't want waterfronts being closed for commerce, for trade, for any kind of utility use as well. To lift the DPA, which only has happened twice, you have to have a certain purpose. You have to have a compelling reason to do it. The compelling reason in this case was Robert Kraft coming into our city with his own money to clean up the land, develop the property, and create a 4-acre park on the waterfront. Again, opening up access to the waterfront for the first time in 100 years. The environmental groups thought it was a good idea, with the right conditions built into legislation, and they went to work with the Kraft group to put an agreement together that had a whole host of things that they wanted to see come to fruition prior to signing legislation to lift the DPA. I filed that legislation. We did some work in the economic development bond bill. We did some work in the budget. We put this in anywhere that we thought was a moving vehicle. It took several attempts to get this passed. We had a public hearing at the State House as well. We heard from the public, we heard from the people who were for it, the very few that were against it. But everyone had a voice to at least convey how they felt about lifting the DPA. The legislation only did that. The legislation did not say we're building a soccer stadium tomorrow. The legislation said lifting a DPA to explore the possibility of building a soccer stadium.
Sal, could you tell us what DPA means?
Designated port area. So designated port area is what the DPA is called.
And that's federal?
That's state.
State.
That's managed by the state. We have the Coastal Zone Management Board, not to get into the weeds, but Coastal Zone Management Board is the one that controls the DPAs across the entire state. So, CZM, all these acronyms, on the state government. So, when we did all this, we ended up doing the legislation, we put the language together to make it compatible to environmental folks and to the Kraft group, and everything was moving along in a good direction. We ultimately got it included in the economic development bill, signed into law by the governor, and now the legislation states that the cities of Boston and Everett, where the stadium actually sits, because there is a small piece of Boston here as well, in the front of the stadium, the front of that project. So Boston and Everett have to negotiate with the Kraft group. And upon completion of an agreement between the two communities, with the Kraft group and the two cities, the DPA will be lifted officially. So at the moment, the DPA is still in effect. The schedule for the two communities to actually come to an agreement went like this. So from December until about March 1st, March 15th, I think it was 15th was the date, they can negotiate without any interference with any third party. They didn't come to an agreement. From March until the end of, is it June? May. from March to May, then they go to mediation. No, May first. No, they're in mediation right now. Right, so, that's why I have my staff here, by the way, see? I can't remember everything. So, from December to May, they can negotiate without any interference with third-party, intermediaries. They didn't come to an agreement. So from May 1st to the end of the calendar year, they are now in mediation. So Tom Glenn, who used to be head of Massport, and Rebecca Kaiser, who's a consultant from Charlestown, are now the mediators that are in the middle of the negotiations between the Crafts and Boston and Everett separately. So the mediation has begun. The negotiations have begun. From what I hear, because I'm not involved in negotiations, because my role doesn't allow me to do that, it has been going okay. Contrary to what you might read in the papers. There is a lot of talking going on between all the parties. If there is no agreement through mediation, which is possible, at the end of the calendar year, it goes to binding arbitration. And at that point, a third-party arbiter will come in and resolve the differences between the two parties. And the arbiter will actually basically break the tie and tell both communities and the craft group what the agreement's going to look like. Nobody wants to get to that point. I can tell you that no side wants an arbiter to decide their fate. So I have a lot of hope that we're going to get something done on paper between now, and I'm figuring, middle of December was probably when this is all going to hopefully happen. At that point, DPA is lifted, and now the MEPA process in Chapter 91, which are public processes the state dictates on this land, which is anyone from the surrounding communities of Chelsea, and Somerville, and Cambridge, and Revere, residents of Everett, and residents of Charlestown, governments of both communities, and governments of all surrounding communities as well, have a chance to make their voices known, what they want this to look like when it becomes a stadium. Traffic implications. How are we going to manage to get all the people in and out of this facility? How are we going to make the waterfront look on our waterfront? I also passed a law to protect environmental justice communities several sessions ago, never realizing that this would actually have an impact right here in this project. So it's a third layer of protections. Because Chelsea is an environmental justice community and so is Everett, there's a third layer of agreements that have to be adhered to as well. So there's 3 chances for the public to be involved in what decision is going to be made going forward. I can tell you when MEPA in Chapter 91 happened and the casino was being built, there was a lot of input from the surrounding communities, a lot of input from individuals, and a lot of those suggestions were implemented into the plan when the casino was built. So it's a really robust proposal and project and process for the public to be involved in. So as we get closer to that date, I'll come back with the representative and we'll talk about how you can make your voices known of how you want this to look and how we're going to move people in and out of the facility. Part of the agreement of this facility coming to fruition was limiting the parking. This is a key component to this project. Some people think it's great, some people don't like it at all. There are only 75 parking spaces allocated for this project. And that was done by design. Because if you build a 10,000 car garage next to the facility, you will have 10,000 cars in your roadway within a 2 or 3 hour time span all at once going into the facility. The roads cannot handle that. The area cannot handle that kind of congestion. It just wouldn't work. There would be no use putting a stadium here because you wouldn't move that many people in and out by car if that was the plan. How we move people in and out of this facility is through public transit. And if I thought, and this is what, some of the detractors might say this, we can't build a stadium there with 75 parking spots. That's true, today. Today, I would not be the proponent for this and advocating for this if I believed for 1 minute that we're going to put a stadium here with 75 parking spaces in its current condition, with no additional transit options. It just wouldn't work. There's no way you move that kind of many people in the current condition. It's not going to happen. I drive that road every single day myself. So we have come up with several things that have been in the works for many years. Many things that were already happening or they were already looking at. going forward. And I'm gonna go through some of those in the slides in a minute. Is that you guys, like, you're going too far ahead of yourself, my staff. So let me just explain to the slides. So that's the overview of the legislation. That's where we are right now. So we have to wait until the end of the year officially for an agreement between the two parties, and then we will be able to take the next step. The permitting on this thing will take several years. This is not an easy permitting process. And the other part of this too is that there's no public funding being used in the cleanup or the building of this facility. That is very unusual if you look at other states. We're one of the very few states in the whole nation that will not subsidize or give any kind of money to private sports team owners. The Cincinnati Bengals, which is a football team in Cincinnati, they have the best deal of them all. The county built the stadium for them at $2 billion, and the team gets to keep all the profit of what happens in the stadium itself. It's an amazing deal, and that happens all across the entire nation. And a lot of the soccer teams now are building soccer-only stadiums, and 90% of them have some public subsidy that allows them to build in those communities. So people are now trying to outbid each other in these communities by offering more money to the owners of these teams to put a stadium in their community, thinking this is going to be a revenue generator for them and an economic development, catalyst. So there is no public money being spent on the cleanup or on the stadium itself. For comparisons, Gillette Stadium, when the Crafts built that several years ago, that was $375 million of private money that he put up to build that stadium. What we're talking about this stadium in Everett is going to be $80 million cleanup and $700 million to build a stadium. All private. So I'm not sure where else in the world we find someone to come and clean up that land, build a public park, generate the amount of jobs they're going to be generating. They're all union jobs. The union already signed an agreement with them, Local 26. They already signed a project labor agreement, so all the union, all union bill as well. So it's all union bill and all union facility in the stadium itself. And it will be an economic driver for the entire region as well. So you're turning a dirty piece of land into what you're going to see here. So let me just explain what's here now. So right here is Alpha Street, what you see here, coming right down the main street in between the casino and the site. The black lines that you see right here, these big black lines, that's where the site is going to be. That's the DPA lines. So this is all the DPA, all the way down here, all the way into Chelsea. We're only taking a small percentage of the DPA to build a stadium. And that was what was key for legislation. You had to have an actual project ready to go to build the DPA. You can't just say, let's get DPA and put something there 10 years from now. They don't want luxury housing on that. They don't want millionaires living on the waterfront and taking away a public asset. The public asset that they deem as a reason to do is the cleanup and the parkland that's going to be created there. So that was key to getting this DPA lifted at the signing of the agreement between the two parties, hopefully in the year. So you see here, this is the power plant as it exists today. You see all the large smokestacks, which have been on the gateway of these two communities for many, many years. And you see some of the tanks as well. That white and blue building right next to it, that is staying. That is still an operational power plant owned by Eversource. So Eversource owns that piece of land and will continue to operate that as a power plant, which makes this even more amazing that we have the craft group wanting to come into this site knowing that the land right next door is a power plant. You're not going to have too many people who spend that kind of money to look out their window and see a power plant right next door. So they're willing to overlook that and willing to take this land that we have here and build a 25,000 seat stadium that'll be state of the art. And I'll show you the actual site from the waterfront. This is in Charlestown. This is what you see coming over the bridge into Everett. You can see the blue and white buildings right there. That's going to stay as it stands today. And this will all be removed and turned into this here. So this is the same view from Charlestown. And now you see the stadium there with the public park in the front. public park itself will be open 24 hours a day for the public. They'll have amenities there, they'll have restrooms, they'll have all kinds of, access points. And you can see it's 4-acre park right there in the waterfront. They can activate the waterfront for the first time and really have amenities for the public to enjoy that were closed off for, like I said, 100 years. This is an aerial view of the stadium itself. You can see it has the balcony roofing on it, so all the seats will be covered from the elements. The stadium, the field itself will be open air. We're still trying to figure out if it's going to be grass or turf. They play on turf now in Foxborough, Revolution do. Some people want it to be grass, and I'm okay with that, but it also limits the use of any kind of public use. So we're trying to make this also be a facility where the public can enjoy it as well. Having our youth groups, play on there, having our bands. I talked to Almeida today about having some of the Chelsea teams playing in this field. That all will be dictated by the surface. If it's going to be turf, then it's a lot easier to manage that because then you have people that can walk on this and no detriment to the field. If it's going to be grass, then it's going to be a problem, a little bit more difficult to have our kids playing on that surface because they're going to want to protect it for the games. So that's still in the works. That's another thing deeper. We can talk about that. You all have a say in that too. You can also voice your opinion what you want that to look like. But you can see how big the park is going to look, and you can see the difference of what was there before with the smokestacks and the dirty piece of land and all that brickwork. And now you're going to have all this green space, a stadium, you're going to have a casino across the street, and all the land next door to the stadium will all be activated at some point with Encore putting more development there as well. So how do we get people in and out of the facility? So there's several different ways that are being proposed that, again, are also in the works. And because the mayor has been working on this for so long, you can see the old power plant is still up in this rendering. Because when this was done, there was no stadium talked about. This was going to be independent of a stadium. But this walkway, this pedestrian bridge, is going to connect Assembly Row with the casino, which activates Assembly Row to this site, which means Assembly Station will also be in use for people that are coming in and out of the stadium. So Assembly Station will be there. You'll have a walkway across the water into the casino site, and then the Alpha Street Bridge, where it sits today, that bridge has an underpass. It's a trail that will be used to move people underneath so they don't have to cross over Alpha Street and cause more traffic. So no one's crossing over Alpha Street. All underneath. So that is a safety hazard, that is a traffic hazard, all of that just won't work. So this pedestrian bridge is funded. It is funded by the state. Charlie Baker funded it. Maura Healy is putting money out. And that's going to be open. We're hoping, not hoping, it will be open in 2029. But paid for, ready to go to construction. And that's the bridge from a different angle, going from Assembly into the casino site. And again, you can see that the power plant is still there, because that was what we thought was going to be there when this was built. The Civil Line extension. So Civil Line extension has been approved from Chelsea down to Sullivan Square. So that was another option for Chelsea residents to come to the stadium as well. The Civil Line will come right down Alpha Street, right where the stadium is. And we envision obviously having more frequent service during game days or concert dates, because it's also going to have concerts, not just soccer games. So we envision that also having more frequent use and frequent transportation during that time. You can see it goes right by the stadium. That's Yoshiki Stadium right there, the little thing with the red. The other way is we also have a commuter rail stop being built. So during the host agreement with Encore, and the city of Everett, a commuter rail stop was in the agreement. The commuter rail stop has not been built because the technology wasn't available to have the trains stop at a certain point behind the casino where the grade goes up. You couldn't accelerate from a complete stop. Don't ask me why, but there used to be a stop there years ago, but we went backwards in technology, now we're going back up again, I guess. But it used to be called Everett Station. So now, as part of the agreement with Encore, is they are designing and building a commuter rail stop. Technology has finally met us where we need it to be. That is fully paid for by Encore. They're doing that, and that'll also be operational, we're hoping, by the time the stadium opens up as well. So that is in the works. We have the agreement. Everybody's on the same page. The technology is there. The T is on board. Everybody's on board. The T stopped them from doing this for years because we didn't have the trains to accelerate. Now we do. So that is happening. So you have commuter rail stop, and you have the pedestrian bridge connecting to Assembly Road. So far, $50 million is what they're looking at. But we have to make sure the iGaming bill does not pass. If the iGaming bill passes, then we are in big trouble with Encore.
Yes, you don't want that.
And you don't want to have iGaming, you don't want to have your phones be little casinos in your pocket anyway. So I'm against that. We're all against that.
We're all against that, we're on the same.
So you have the Civil Line extension, you have the commuter rail stop, you have the pedestrian bridge, and then we have the bus routes as well. These are the new frequent bus lines that will be coming in through Chelsea, into Everett, into downtown Boston. And you can see the proximity. The 109 bus will come right down from there. It's connecting services. So I talked to Fidel tonight too about how we should have direct shuttle buses from certain places in Chelsea. So we don't have to depend on public transit. You know, Chelsea should have their own transit coming into the stadium as well. So we're going to be talking about that. That's part of Chapter 91. It's part of MIPA. So, and part of what we're talking to the craft group about what we need for, part of what we need for Chelsea. Make this work. This is more of the bus lines. This is all the bus lines that are going through. You can see, again, 109, 104 connects over there, 110. But again, we're going to create more connectivity there on usage days and shuttle buses from different points of Chelsea. That's it, right? Yes.
Yes.
All right, so the water ferry. I'm going to put this back up on this one. So the other component of the transportation is water ferries. So Boston Harbor Now was a part of the environmental groups that were talking to the crafts. And we didn't want to close out the waterfront to water transit or water transportation. So there are ferries being developed right now that are electric ferries. There's several companies that have come to us to talk about water shuttles and how to transport people. So we are activating the waterfront with water shuttles. So what you see there, there's a couple of little small docks, but they're going to be built out larger docks, going to be larger boats. There'll be 2-story boats, kind of like we see on the Hudson River. So those are some of the size boats we're looking at, transport people, you know, and maybe Mary Valley Park could be one of the stops with a new dock over there. So we are, you know, in all different parts of Chelsea and also in the North Shore. We envision going up to Salem with these water transport. So you have 4. So you have water transportation, you have commuter rail, you have the Civil Line extension, you have the pedestrian bridge, and you also have what's already there today, Sullivan Station in Charlestown. So you have all these different access points to move people, and again, not crossing over Alpha Street, all the traffic from the commuter rail and from the pedestrian bridge, all the foot traffic will walk under the Alpha Street bridge. So no one's crossing over Alpha Street itself. Very safe. We're going to have better connections with Sullivan Square. We're going to clean up Sullivan Square to make sure that it's a safer pedestrian walk for folks there as well. So it is an exciting opportunity to do all this stuff. You know, we are at the verge of bringing all this together. After the negotiations are complete with Boston and Everett, that is when everyone else will also be engaged. Legislation was very clear that it had to be touching the two communities who was going to be negotiating with them. This is very different than the casino. The casino legislation was statewide. That was a lot of moving parts to get that passed, including putting a lot in the surrounding community agreements. So when it came to Revere, originally, what we thought, Suffolk Towns, all the surrounding communities in Revere started talking about trying to come to agreements with the operator that was going to go on Suffolk. When Wynn got the license for Everett, everybody shifted over to Everett and started agreements, including Chelsea. The only community that did not have an agreement with Wynn was Revere, because they were holding out for the casino in Revere, so they didn't negotiate with the Everett casino, which that was their choice. Chelsea had the foresight to negotiate a good deal with them, and is still in business today. So we all know there'll be a time and a place, and obviously you have myself and Representative Garcia, who are going to make sure that Chelsea is represented and at the table when that time happens. I know Fidel is already trying to open lines of communication with them as well, with several mayors in the area, and everybody wants to work together to make this happen and make a seamless transition for all parties to be okay with what is happening here in the city of Everett. So there'll be many opportunities. I know councilors have been very vocal about making sure that Chelsea's not left behind, and I'm with you. We're all on the same page. We're all on the same page. And we want to make sure that at least you knew what the project looked like, what the legislation looked like, what the transit options look like, because if we don't have good transit options, we know what's going to happen. Chelsea's going to be impacted in a big way. We can't get people into this facility as well. If we didn't have any transit options, it would be a mess in this whole region. It just wouldn't work. So limiting the parking does help. It does help, even though people think we're a little crazy sometimes saying 700 parking spaces for 25,000 people. But again, you build parking lots around this facility, you will get what you get, traffic. So the ones that say we want less traffic but more parking, you can't have both. You can't have both. You have a lot of parking, you have more traffic. They go hand in hand. So we feel, there's a lot of options here. Many stadiums around the country don't have any parking at all. And they use this kind of model. And many of those facilities don't have the number of transit options that we have right here that are going to be developed prior to opening the door of the stadium. European stadiums is 80,000 seat stadiums that have no parking, zero parking at all. And then move 80,000 people in and out of the facilities seamlessly. With the right transit options and the right plan in place, the right mitigation that's put in place, 25,000 seats on concert days and on game days should be able to accommodate what's happening here. The models show it. Everything looks like we're in good shape. And the last thing I'll say is that I was just going to give you a golden nugget. I just lost it. I'll think about it when you ask questions. But that's where we're at. So I think if anyone has any questions about anything I just said, and if I can't answer them, we'll get an answer for you.
So we'll start off.
Your public transit options seem...
Should we, you want to come up with that? And maybe we can...
So people on CCTV can hear.
Oh, okay.
we can a little bit of,
Thanks.
it's like microphone dance.
Like Phil Donahue, I'm old.
Your public transit options seem incredibly well thought out and thoughtful. How will you prevent people from using ride shares as opposed to your options? Because I think that's most people's go-to. And then the other question I have is, I would love to see the current biking situation in and out of Chelsea, which is basically Beecham Street or Route 16. I would love to see that improved in this model because Beeching Street is dangerous.
Yes, it is.
It's inappropriate for biking, and it's really the best way to know, so.
And just so you know too, because I'm not writing them down, I have my team here. You know, I have Eli and Ayla and Yoshki, my team. So,
But I'm writing too.
and Representative's writing everything as well. So we'll make sure that, you know, whatever concerns you have, I'll be able to answer some of them, and then, but I'll keep everything written down so we can bring them back when the time is right. And again, these aren't my transit options. I would love to take credit for this, but I'm just explaining what is already in the works. The city of Everett has put all these transit options on the table. They've been working for several years, which allows us to meet the demand now as opposed to starting when the stadium actually was first thought of. So because this was already in the works, we now get to benefit from all the work that came before, thank you, before this point. But the ride share, so TNCs, you know, Uber, Lyft, and all of those folks, that is something that we're going to be looking at in, you know, doing off-site lots, right, and shuttle services. So that is actually something that if they come to Chelsea and say we have a lot in Chelsea that we want to use, then that mitigation follows a lot, right? So there's a, you know, there's no way you're going to have all these TNCs, Uber pulling up in front of the stadium all at once. That defeats the purpose of creating less traffic with no parking, because then you just have drop-offs continuously all the way down the street. So, like airports and like in other stadiums too, they have off-site lots where they don't allow any TNCs or Lyft drop-offs at the site itself. Now, will some people try to do it in the beginning? I'm sure they will, but after you show them that's not going to be the case, it won't be allowed with some strong enforcement, then it'll stop. But that has been the growing pains of some other stadiums across the country where they don't allow any Uber or Lyft drop-offs at the site. But they figure it out after the first few games. And the stadium will be in use. What we're hearing from the Revolution will be about 80 days a year. So they're building a big facility at a huge expense and not using it for full capacity for most of the year. 80 days, that includes concerts and includes games. Soccer games is like 20 games a year. So this is a big expense for 20 games a year. So they have to use other ways of putting the stadium to use. And concerts are one use, and then other big events that rent out the stadium for different events there too. But 80 days is what they're saying roughly for the year. So it's a lot of money for a small amount of impact and a small amount of days in comparison to what could be there in the future.
You want to come up, Councilman?
Sure.
Hi, State Representative Judith. Hi, Senator Sal. And good evening, everyone. Kelly Garcia, your Chelsea City Councilor at large. My question is, can you share more about your hiring or the thoughts around hiring and how you will be prioritizing local hiring both in Everett and Chelsea?
Great question. I forgot that part. So yes. So first preference will be given to Everett residents, but obviously there would not be enough residents applying for jobs like there was in the casino. And then Chelsea, Somerville, Revere, and Malden have the next preference for jobs for the stadium. So similar to what they did at the casino, similar model with that. The same union represents the people at the casino and the people that will be working at the stadium. Jimmy McNeil, Local 26, he's very aware of Everett and Chelsea area and what needs to be done to make sure that they have preference. So it will be written in the agreement. Actually, it is written in the environmental agreement with those cities listed already. And the mayor of Everett signed it.
Talk about the question on, do I come up? Can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah. Brother Mine.
No, thank you.
No, do it.
It's fine.
You're on TV.
Osborne.
Route 99,
Yes.
there's a lot of construction right by that yellow building there. What's going in on that? Is that going to be apartments or commercial?
He's talking about the Innovation District Council.
Yeah, there's a chain link fence there.
Chain link fence.
Right
He's confusing the
across from
site.
casino.
I think he's
What are we looking
confusing,
at?
he's confusing the site with the innovation, the Everett Innovation Dock. There we go.
Oh, on the
Right,
top.
right, on the other side.
You mean on this side?
Right. Is
Yeah.
that going to be,
Yeah.
influenced by the casino or vice versa?
Yeah, so that, the Davis Group is, so ExxonMobil, another brownfield that was left behind by a big industrial, giant. ExxonMobil sold this land to Davis Company, and they're putting, it's 90 acres of undeveloped land right now. And it's contaminated land, and it's also full of gas tanks. The gas tanks have been removed, and that's a 30-year project.
There used to be some triple deckers there too.
There were triple deckers where the casino is, and with a parking lot. So this is all parking lots. So right here, back here is all parking lots. All these triple deckers up until Mike Shore Speed. You know Mike Shore Speakers? So Mike Shore Speed, from Mike's down to the casino, all the triple deckers are gone.
So, are the Crafts going to do something with that land in conjunction with the building?
That's owned by the casino, that land. The parking lot's owned by Encore, and up here is owned by the Davis Company. So there's two separate owners beyond that property. They're all working together to make sure that they all have some synergy, because they all depend on each other to be successful. So Davis Company has 90 acres. Encore has all these parking lots they were going to put in phase 2. Now they're going to do their phase 2 across the street and lease out this land to other hotels, and so it'll be an entertainment district. It'll be, a whole area that will complement the stadium, and it's like it'll be owned by the Crafts.
So will there be food concessions as well? Small mom and pop places?
That has not been decided about, what that's going to look like in the future. There are no renderings or plans right now for how it looks when it comes to, when it comes to reality. But it is, the 90 acres up here, again, the 30-year process. They have been very clear that they're going to build things in phases. So the build-out is taking 30 years. The cleanup is still happening as we speak. All this land is very contaminated. This whole corridor was all, there were houses here that were built on contaminated land. And if they weren't built on it, they became contaminated because it was leaching into their soil, into the foundations, from all the heavy industry that was there before. So Encore went in, when they came in, they bought 90 properties here at $900,000 apiece. They spent about $100 million to buy property that the homeowners were very happy to sell, because their mortgage was a lot more than the house was worth, because it's a very depressed area for years. You had brownfields all around you. It wasn't a great place to live in terms of, raising families. And also the public park that was there. I brought my son there for soccer tryouts the very first day. And there was a scrapyard right next door. And the cloth from the scrapyard would pick up all the metals, and all the dust would fly into the field. When my son went over for tryouts, I kept him there for about 10 minutes and we left, because the grass in the field was all sparkled, because all the heavy metals were all over the grass in the field. It was contaminated park. Encore took that land and gave Everett land on the waterfront on the other side to make a public park. So Encore's done a lot, where they've taken contaminated land, cleaned it up, and given Everett clean land for the communities to enjoy, and took everything that was living in those houses, took the problem on it.
Leo Robinson. First, I want to thank Senator Sal and Judith. When Sal was working on the bill, I first reached out to him. He said there was a little early. I said, but I want to make sure that Chelsea's at the table.
Yeah.
So far, we've had some back and forth conversation. I feel very confident that we're going to be at the table and we're going to get whatever the best is for Chelsea. I just publicly want to thank you for all the work that you've done.
Leo contacted me very early on. Very early. He was watching the start right from the beginning.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you for coming, thank you for the presentation. Hi everyone, Roberto Jimenez, Chelsea City Councilor at Large. I have a question. I think there's a lot of thought has been given to how we're using public transit to get people to the stadium and back, which I think is really thoughtful, and I want to thank you for that. So I do agree with you. You know, if we build a 10,000 car garage, that's what we're going to have, 10,000 cars. So I agree with you on that piece of the vision. I'm curious, there is still a lot of need for transit options outside of the hours that the stadium is going to be used, and I'm really curious. The council has passed, a resolution in support of a study to be done on the Tobin replacement to add rail there. Is that a potential option that could help make sure that we have essentially rail transit on both sides of the project to essentially help further alleviate the traffic that's going to be there, in addition to helping people off hours and get around the rest of the city, which we know, Chelsea and Everett are both currently underserved by current public transit. So that's one question. And then the second question is just more as the cost of building continues to go up, especially with tariffs, what is the impact on that currently on the project? Is there any fear that this will just be put on hold, forever, as we've seen in a couple of the larger developments in Boston, Suffolk Downs, as you mentioned earlier? I'm just kind of curious what has been any updates on that from recent times.
So I'll answer the second part first. So I talked to the Revolution folks this weekend, actually. They had an event over in Everett. They have full speed ahead. They have not blinked once when it comes to building this facility. They just want the negotiations done with Boston and Everett. They can move on to the public process and get things rolling. Once the negotiation is done, the building's coming down. So they already have a company hired to come in and tear down the building and clean up the land. They're just waiting for the agreement to be in place, and BPA is officially lifted. They don't want to build, take the building down until the agreement is lifted, it's done, and BPA is lifted, because anything can happen in their mind, right? So they're not going to spend upwards of $80 million until they're sure that the land is going to be developed into the stadium. So they're all in. I have not gotten any indication from them that anything is going to stop this from happening. I am supportive of putting rail on the top, so we both are. So that is something that we can use the NEPA process in Chapter 91 to try to get some help with that. The transit options that are now being used for the stadium were developed a long time ago. The commuter rail stop was, and I think I just told you how it all came to fruition. So everything that I just explained to you, even including the water shuttles, because the water shuttles are being in use on the Encore side. They're much smaller because they have to go underneath the bridge, the Apple Street Bridge, and no one wants to keep lifting that bridge up every time you have a water shuttle. So every option that I just mentioned, including Sullivan Square redesign, which Boston's doing right now with federal money that they've been using, that's still so far in their hands, it's not been clawed back yet. The Mike Capuano got many years ago that they're ready to spend. So all these things are the reason why we can even think about having a stadium at that site. If we just started today on all these options, they would not be ready for the opening of a stadium, which would be judgmental, and we just couldn't do it. I wouldn't be part of that. That's not something I would feel comfortable with. So, but it's not to say that we can't have rail on the Tobin at some point and start the process now and say this will make things even easier to move people. So that's something as a city, the NEPA process, that's absolutely something you should put in that proposal.
If I may add as well, just to contextualize your question, I think that the Senator and I can both agree that what's being proposed today is just one part of the conversation with the stadium, but there are tangent conversations that are taking place in ways that we can expand that mode of transportation. We just added the 104 bus as well to the city of Chelsea to connect us to Everett, to connect us to Malden. So these conversations, we continue to hope to add those tools for all of our residents. But right now, our focus is this. However, that doesn't stop other conversations. And I appreciate your leadership as well on that proposal for the Tobin and many of you here. So we will continue to have those conversations. I know some residents here from Admiral's Hill have also proposed as well, ferry, opening up the ferry in Admirals Hill area, which we know we have a beautiful pier. That's another conversation that the Senator and I have been leading as well. What do we do with that pier to bring it back to life and to bring more water transportation to our residents overall? I see some.
What were you gonna say, Taylor?
I was just saying that you sent a letter to MassDOT after Chelsea passed that
Yes.
resolution, asking them to.
We both did,
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you for that. So, para las personas que hablan español, la pregunta aquí del concejal Jiménez fue que, bueno, tuvo dos preguntas, pero una de ellas, que fue la que yo pude contextualizar más, fue sobre transportación. ¿Qué más podemos hacer, si me corrige aquí el concejal, para asegurarnos de que existan más proyectos de transportación, no solo enfocándonos en lo que se está presentando hoy, sino también avenidas nuevas en el puente del Tobin Bridge? Esta idea de poder abrir algún tipo de ferrocarril en el Tobin Bridge, ya que la conversación, además de esta conversación que se está teniendo, es cómo vamos a reemplazar el puente Tobin, ya que necesita mucha reparación. Entonces mi respuesta y la respuesta del senador aquí es que estas conversaciones, aquí tenemos propuestas de extensiones de transportación pública que queremos abrir, pero también tenemos otras conversaciones que se están llevando a cabo que no tienen que ver con estadio, pero de también expandir la transportación pública en la ciudad de Chelsea. Y pues le agradezco al concejal por su liderazgo, ya de que él está a favor de agregar un ferrocarril, una vía en el puente del Tobin. Entonces, son muchas conversaciones, incluyendo abrir lo que es la zona marítima para permitir barcos, también la transportación de personas en barcos de la ciudad de Chelsea a Boston, a Everett y a otras áreas. Entonces, la conversación de transportación no se detiene aquí, sigue también en otras áreas de nuestra comunidad. También agregamos el bus 104 aquí en la ciudad de Chelsea, que ya está activo y que lo puede conectar a ustedes a la ciudad de Everett, a la ciudad de Mountain, y estas conversaciones siguen. You got that.
Don't forget it all.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Let me see how to frame this and phrase it carefully. Can we switch to the slide with the stadium, because it's very exciting to see something so green and so beautiful there. It's a long dream of everybody to have access to water in general, as well as parks. Are extremely beneficial for people on many different levels: physical, emotional, social. We can go out and feel better about life. Let's not talk about the casino, which is a little bit addictive. Soccer, much better. The whole world loves soccer. I cannot wait for this to happen. But talking about parks and industrial zones, and because we're in Chelsea, I see you're making great effort to transform industrial zones into something that's very useful. Some data shows that the industrial zones in Everett are about 20%, 22%, which is 1/5. In Chelsea, in comparison, they're 1/3 of Chelsea's industrial zones. That's 1/3 of the city is industrial, and we have only 4% parks and open spaces. And if you exclude the state park, Mary O'Malley, we only have about 1 or 2% green spaces. In contrast, Everett has about 12%, and it's getting bigger and better. And I love what's happening. What could you do about Chelsea in a way that you can open communications with developers in such ways that we start transforming our own industrial zones? Because you can admit that 30% is a little bit too much, and I cannot find another city in America that has so many industrial zones, and Chelsea has a history of taking an industrial zone and with a special permit trying to make it even worse for the residents. So I really admire that you're actually making an industrial zone a better place. So if you can help Chelsea to achieve such things, that would be great.
We almost saved it all. So, yes, so obviously there's a lot happening in Everett. I would love to take credit for that, but it is not my role as a state senator to open negotiations with developers. That is not what I do. The folks that came to Everett, I didn't bring the crafts to Everett. I didn't bring the casino to Everett. I could lie and tell you, yes, this is great. I was the guy that brought it on. That is not the case. when a developer comes to the community, then I find a way to make things better if there's any kind of impediments at the state level that make development a success. So my role is lifting a DPA at the site after the Crafts initially contacted the city of Everett, the mayor. So at that point, we found out even though they wanted to build something in Everett, they couldn't with the current restriction on the waterfront. That's when we met. So yes, so anytime there's a project in Chelsea that we can be helpful with at the state level to make things easier, that we can actually pass a law, or legislation, or an amendment, something that we do, we will absolutely be there, and we have been. It's just a matter of where the developers find their home first.
And maybe a quick follow-up, because on a state level or federal level, I'm not sure there's regulation about the distance between residential buildings and industrial zones, which is very confusing to me because apparently cities for some reason are built for people to enjoy living, and if the distance to industrial zone is 12 feet or 15 feet, that's very hard. So I don't know, when can we start thinking about passing a law or any legislation? I don't understand how it exactly works, but a bill that would put on state level some minimum distances to industrial zones.
Sounds good, and I actually think there's something already in the works that will alleviate that problem. And a lot of the other issues we have now are more on zoning, right? Local zoning is where a lot of that happens. So on local zoning laws dictate more than the state of where things are being built. And spot zoning is a big problem that we don't want to get involved in. But I like your point, and there is something in the works at the state level. There's a bill going through the legislature right now that we'll make sure to take a look at.
Good evening, Marlene Jennings. Senator, thank you so much for everything you've been doing, and Judith, thank you as well. And I appreciate that the city council has already been at the table about this, because I've lived here for a long time, and I never thought in my lifetime that I would see Beecham Street look like it does. So it's very exciting. I have two quick questions. One, in driving down Beecham Street, the odors have been really horrible. And it's because all of that pollution has been disrupted. And I hope that the removal of all of the soil and everything that's contaminated, I hope that that is really done. I hope that we can really get to the bottom of that and get it. I'm afraid to ask where it's going, but I just hope it gets out of here. And then my second question is, of course, it's for Mary O'Malley Park. And what are the plans for, this looks unbelievably beautiful. What would be the plans for the other side, for the Chelsea side, for Mary O'Malley Park? What would they do? Would they be working on the erosion? We know they have the pier that they're going to be doing, but what other plans are in the works for that?
So first, I can tell you where the contaminated land went for Encore. It went to Quebec, of all places, Quebec, Canada. They have a big market up there to take contaminated land. I'm not sure why, but Quebec is a lucky winner, unfortunately. They are using the same company that Encore used to excavate the land. Well, they did an Encore site that doing something similar there. They actually go down to bedrock, take all that junk out, and then there are hot spots where it's just not possible to move some of that land, and they encase it in concrete. They have a special mix that they put in there. So the land will be clean. It will be at the grade level of, like it is across the street where you can live on it. Like there's different grades, recreational, passive. It will be the highest grade. So that all will be gone, and maybe go back again. I'm not sure where, but I don't ask where. I just want to know it's going to be gone. I don't want to see it anymore. So we did have funding in place to create some resiliency on the Chelsea side, $50 million that the federal government just took from us. We worked really hard to get that money. The federal government, we have a $22 million match from the state government to put up resiliency along the entire Chelsea Creek area, and it was going to be pretty amazing. Fidel was like on top of it, the city council, Judith and I, our delegation from the surrounding areas. worked many years to make that happen. And a program that President Trump actually developed his first term, that he took away his second term. So we cannot do that project now. We don't have enough money, we just don't have it. The state money is still there, but we don't have enough money to offset the federal loss. There are resiliency pieces, the MEPR in Chapter 91 piece absolutely will apply when the craft group is putting together all that process about Mary Park. It is close enough to talk about that area in particular. So let's stay close on that to make sure that we're all talking the same language on that. And also the other piece of this too is the permitting process is very robust and can be cumbersome. It can be really difficult. And so what I'll do, working with Fidel and Judith, and making sure that everyone has access and you know, I know you guys do this all the time. So, you know, Fidel is, you know, you guys are very lucky to have Fidel, by the way. He's been, you know, working with us on skating and so many other things too. This is one of many things. But you have a person who's not going to make sure that everyone has a voice here. We'll make sure that the paperwork and any kind of permitting process and public process you know about, and we'll help you get that in there as well. And once it's in there, then we can advocate for it.
And Senator, if I may quickly also add, I know that the neighbors of Mary O'Malley, friends of Mary O'Malley, and the residents of the neighborhood have also been very active in discussions with the senator and myself about the pier and how to fix that. We did have a change in leadership, so we do have a new DCR commissioner who clearly, we both know that we will be re-inviting and bringing her up to speed on where we were with that project to make sure that that conversation continues in tangent with everything else in the NEPA process. So I do want to add that we do have a new commissioner. Thank you.
Calvin T.
Hey. Thank you, Senator, for being here. I just want to add on to what you and the rep were saying regarding the O'Malley Park. We as a city council, we have negotiated and been in touch with DCR, and within the next 2 years, I believe it's 2 years, that we have got a kind of what we call a commitment to have all this stuff that we're talking about with the O'Malley Park to be completed in 2 years. I know folks want to get it done right away right now, but we have been at the table, at the lead here, and it's something that, since we're on that topic, I just wanted the folks to know that we haven't forgot about O'Malley Park, and we're working very hard. They've been very good, you've been very good, and on that, so I appreciate that. But also, just, you know, I was going to say this here, you know, we were talking, and you and I, we kind of got a little heated in a conversation regarding all the work that's being done on the Chelsea side and some of the, you know, the benefits that weren't mentioned prior to Chelsea because we weren't a host or invited community. I'm just wondering if you can just give us any information regardless where we are now, because again, a lot of it's going to fall on Chelsea. A lot of the things that you're talking about here are very great things, very nice things, but a lot of the impact will come over in Chelsea. And you know, I was looking at the bridge coming over from Assembly Road, coming over to the facility, the soccer stadium and stuff. But those folks are still coming here, and I believe that's why we see the construction going on at Market Basket here. So if you can just tell us again, just basically, you know, have we been mentioned at the table? I know we're 3-4 years out, but we still want to have some hope that we still need beyond the Jobs Act. Great friend of Jameer and Local 26. We know that they, and some of us as City Council, we have supported them and they're here with us. But we just need to know that we're still not being forgotten at the table.
As long as you have us, you're not being forgotten. And as I mentioned, there's several steps to this project and this process itself. So Boston and Everett, because it actually physically sits in those communities, the agreement has to be in place with them first. At that point, then all the other communities around it will obviously have their chance to speak to them as well. It is very deliberate, because if there is no agreement, between these two cities and the crafts, then there's no project. DPA does not happen. The DPA is not lifted. So we are getting 2 steps ahead of ourselves if we start talking about what is happening around the stadium if there's no stadium. So I know I'm very hopeful. I can't imagine this not happening at this point. But these are business people as well. And until the contract is signed and the agreements are in place, they don't look at it as it's happening until that point. When they're sure that they're moving forward, again, they could take the building down tomorrow, but they're not, because then that wouldn't be smart business people unless they know. So when we talk about surrounding community agreements, or surrounding community commitments, we are not at that point yet, because we're not at the point where they're saying absolutely, definitely happening, now go. When that happens, you have us at the table, obviously, and you have Fidel, who's already working on it as we speak. He's already reached out. There's already a line of communication between several mayors and the craft group working together. So there's a lot of moving parts before we get to that point. But obviously, we know the proximity of Chelsea. We know what's happening here. And, I'm the state senator for Charlestown, Everett, Chelsea. I have Cambridge as well, but that has impacted those 3 other communities. So I got 3 babies here.
Thank you.
So, and all 3 are my babies.
And Councilor, thank you so much for that question, because I think this is our commitment, and this is why we're here today. These are forums that the senator has been in Charlestown, Somerville, doing the same forums. I asked for this forum thanks to the advocacy of Leo Robinson, and the senator didn't even flinch and said, yes, let's do it, because even though this is in the works, there's negotiations taking place, they might not go through, we hope that's not the case, but we are here with presentations to be transparent and to have an open line of communication to showcase and have you envision what the project is, what that timeline looks like. I think the senator has done an incredible job explaining. This is a really long process, but we want you to know what is happening, and we also want you to step up and ask us questions, bring feedback of what our future plans should look like, if we need better bike lanes, and we're here to listen. That's the priority. We don't want to surprise you. We don't want to legislate via the newspaper and for you to find out via a press release of where the project is moving. We're here for that reason, so we want to thank you for that, and we welcome more questions. I see more people lined up for more questions.
Hi, Representative Garcia and Michael. Thank you so much for being here in this presentation and your support throughout this process. My question was echoing some of the sentiments that Councilor Calvin had mentioned. And I guess mine was, how will the revenue generated by the stadium, for example, the jobs, tourism, and hospitality, be shared or leveraged to benefit Chelsea and the surrounding community? So based on what you just said, it seems like we're not there just yet. What I do want to know is, you mentioned the timeline. Do we have a timeline as to when those conversations are going to be happening? And how can we ensure that we are engaged in that very moment? And I have full trust in both of you that we will be there. I just want to know when.
Yeah, so again, the end of the year is when we have to have some sort of agreement in place, or it goes to binding arbitration. The binding arbitration process could take, if it gets to that point, I'm hoping it doesn't, but if it does get to that point, could take up to 3 or 4 months by the time they submit, 6 months even, depending on how much detail the agreements are going to be. It's like when you hear arbitration, you have the Red Sox and Bruins players go through. Both sides put their sides up of what they think is going to be the best deal. The arbiter either picks one side or picks something in the middle. And it's a very convoluted, very complex issue, so it will not happen that quickly. Again, nobody wants arbiters to decide their fate, so I don't think we're going to get that far, but again, when you deal with billions of dollars, everything's on the table. So after that is happening, after there's an agreement in place and a DPA is finally lifted, The DPA is key, because at that point, they can move forward with the public process and start talking to other communities. So literally it could happen in the spring of next year. It could be that soon, or it could be in the summer of next year, depending on when they finalize all the deals between the two parties that they're negotiating with right now. So at that point, then, all the public process that I talked about, and talking to Fidel and talking to the neighboring mayors, all that happens at that point.
And we will be proactive.
Yeah, we'll make sure that everyone knows, especially the meet from Chapter 91 process, that's something where everybody has a say. All cities, all residents. You don't need to be a city council, you don't need to be the city manager, the senator, rep. Everybody has the chance to have input during that process.
Hey, good evening, Senator and Representative Nicholas Gregoretti. Two questions really about, think about it as like supporting our auxiliary infrastructure that we haven't, I don't think we've quite covered. So I think question one, or concern one would be, I love the fact that we're using public transit, right, to move people towards the stadium, but we need to make sure that we're not just simply pushing that problem outside, where you're going to get congestion at the points of entry to that public transit. So for example, you talked about the water taxi at Merrill Valley Park. That's an area of concern that I've already heard from other residents about parking and the infrastructure supporting Merrill Valley Park as it stands. So I think we need to make sure that when we're thinking, okay, we're going to put a point of entry, we're going to put a water ferry in Merrill Valley Park, which I think would be phenomenal, we need to make sure that we're considering what is going to be some of the externalities of that decision. The second piece, as a former emergency responder, I'm always thinking about events when I hear about 25,000 people being in the same place 80 times a year. As Chelsea, we would be a mutual aid, I would imagine, to the stadium. So we need to make sure that we're planning in the event that there is an MCI or mass casualty incident, for those that don't know, which is simply just an incident that overwhelms the local resources that are available. It's not as dramatic as it sounds, but anyway, in the event of an MCI, that Chelsea is prepared and the surrounding emergency response is prepared to handle that situation.
So that part is that's being explored between all the parties, all the developers in the area, to try to find a way to come to a resolution with public safety building potentially in that vicinity itself. The shared expense of all the developers that I mentioned earlier. Casino, Davis Company, and Crafts. Also, they are required to, and again, it wouldn't be apparatus like you're talking about, but they have police and fire detail at their own expense during use of the stadium, like the casino. People think that the firefighters and the police are being drained in Everett in some way by the casino. If you saw the bill that the casino pays for police and fire detail, they would quickly find out that it's not a drain on the city resources. It's just not. They're paying for all that themselves out of their own pocket. So they will make sure, like they do in Foxborough, they have an adequate, and Foxborough is double. And those fire departments are much smaller than we have here, out in that part of the state. So they have a plan, a public safety plan that they're implementing. They're talking about fine tuning right now to alleviate any kind of concerns that you might have with mutual aid, which is a concern for sure. And then the water tax. So MEPA and Chapter 91 address all of that, those concerns. So when we say MEPA and Chapter 91, they also look at the impacts on traffic, where those pressure points might come from. So it's a regional approach. It's not just, we're going to put people on a boat in Chelsea, and when it hits Everett, now we're going to look and see the impact. They look at every impact for Uber and Lyft lots. They look at, because there'll be traffic going into Uber and Lyft lots, right? So if they're parking somewhere, there'll be cars somewhere on the road. So all of that is looked at with the traffic plan and the master plan when all this is being developed. So again, the mitigation and all the unintended consequences that might come about after a good sound plan happens or was put on paper, we tweaked and tweaked and tweaked. That's why it takes so long. It takes several years to get all this on paper to the point where everyone is satisfied that we're not going to overburden or be a detriment to other communities as well. So there's a lot that goes into it. People don't understand why can't we just knock this down and build this in 18 months. I love that. but that wouldn't be a service to the communities that we're living in, because you can't develop a plan that quickly. We thought, when we were doing this bill several years ago, that we'd have it open by 2026 for the World Cup. That's how far away we were looking at this. This was, again, this was a while. This was when we first started 4 years ago. So we figured, World Cup is coming. 2026 is 5 years away. We may be able to get this in. They wouldn't have the World Cup here, but they would have, clinics and practices and things like that. And that would be a good way of opening the stadium during the World Cup Festival in our backyard. Not happening, obviously, but all of that is going to take a lot of time, and I can guarantee you that we're watching all that happening around us.
And if I may add, I'll share, to piggyback on his comment, there were proposals, there was an MBTA proposal before us that we did not like. And, for the public to know, there are conversations that happen in the background that we're actively monitoring and just keeping ourselves to the ground. The first proposal, we can say publicly, we were not happy. And they got the wrath of all the big delegation. It was a lot of us there. And to your point, in terms of concern of the water taxi and how we're opening that up, we can rest assured that the senator and I, always in partnership with the local council, we will make sure to pull in and involve the residents to understand what you want from this area that's going to impact you. Because we did hear in the past that there was interest for a water taxi and to open up that pier for more access, but we want to understand if that changes in the future. We welcome your feedback, because we tend to proceed by listening and hearing you and taking those observations with us. So rest assured, there will nothing that will happen without your feedback. So thank you. I see our council president as well here. Thank you, Norielis.
Good evening, everyone. I actually have to go pick up my son from football practice, so. But I just want to thank you, Senator and State Representative. You guys have been doing amazing work, keeping us posted, keeping us in the loop, and sharing that, the voices of our community, the questions and concerns on the council side, listening and getting all the emails from our fellow councilor Robinson, and working closely with our city manager. I just stepped out real quickly to talk to Charlie, our athletic department new director, and I'm really excited. I just want to uplift that, soccer in Chelsea is special. It's special everywhere, but in Chelsea it connects really closely to the cultures in our community and the diversity, and so we are so excited that this is going to be an opportunity for our youth to be involved, our youth to be able to use that space, to engage in all the different areas that, and whether it's the sports management side or the journalism side, everything, right? And so this is a great opportunity. Please keep us posted as soon as we are ready to come up with programs of engagement for our youth. Let us know. I know that you've been speaking with Almi as well, and Almi and Charlie had a great plan. I'm going to go pick up my son, who's also very excited about this game. So thank you guys so much, and have a great evening.
Council President. Thank you for your leadership.
And I will say, to piggyback on what Alicia said, so the Revolution are very, very much committed to the communities and the surrounding communities that they're involved in. They have a tremendous community relations team. They have a tremendous youth sports support system that they have in place where they are in Foxborough right now. We have heard nothing but great things from that area. All the cities that touch Foxborough have been impacted in a positive way by them. So we're excited about not just having the physical stadium in the neighborhood, but also what they bring to the community as well. And they do a lot of clinics, and they just did one yesterday in Everett. They did a big tournament in Everett. They had players from Revolution there. They had their mascot there. They had the public relations team there. That is what they'll be doing in all the communities that they'll be surrounding the stadium as well. So there's a lot of excitement, not just contaminated land being turned into something beautiful, but what they bring to the table in terms of the services to our youth.
Hello, Eddie Gaffney. Thank you, Sal, Judith, and Fidel for setting this up. This is super exciting. I love all the activity that's happening with the stadium, Encore, and the ExxonMobil site. If you go to the transportation slide real quick, I just want to, something that I've noticed over the last couple of months and going to Everett, going to the Everett meetings as well as the ones in Chelsea here. One thing, I think Chelsea is super unique and we have a great opportunity because right now we are the only T-stop that's on this side of the river that's closest to the stadium. And I think that's something that we need to address and highlight more because, the Chelsea T-stop to the stadium, it's half a mile or less walking distance. So I think some people mentioned too, I think we need to work with the developers in Everett to try and come up with a good solution to encourage people to stop, hang out in Chelsea, and then walk to, it's gonna happen naturally. I see more and more people walking and biking Beecham Street to get into Chelsea, and I just see that right now it's a hazard. It's really dangerous in that area. There's no lines in the street or anything like that. People are just kind of just a free-for-all. So I would hope to see some sort of additional connection, pedestrian, bike lanes, all that stuff to help, alleviate some of that traffic coming to the stadium because, the Encore one, that one's not done yet. It's committed, but I know the Davis Group was going to do it and they backed out because it cost $50 million. So, I think we need to highlight that we actually are a stop, and from the North Shore, you can stop here and walk less than half a mile to get to the stadium. So I think that's something that should also be part of it. Thanks, guys.
Great point, yes, absolutely. But I will say, the Encore stop is happening before the stadium is built. That is happening. So that has to be the key component to make this work. So that will be open by the time the stadium opens up as well. The what? The iGaming, yeah.
Y si tienen preguntas en español, siéntanse libres también.
Hi, Edwin speaking. I came late, so I'm sorry. But just piggybacking about the MBTA, I know there was a report, Bolt Report 2040, MBTA report, that talked about extending the Orange Line to somewhere Broadway area in Everett. I know that's not going to happen anytime soon, but throwing an idea out there, since they're doing all that big development with the condos, I think Davis, I don't know, extending a branch of the Orange Line from Sullivan, I think it is Sullivan, to somewhere in that area where the condos are going to be built.
Thank you. Yeah, and there was talk of putting an Orange Line spur over there. It is, I'm truthful with everybody here, that's a big lift. I'm not sure that's going to come to fruition. But it is something that has been on paper. But my friends in Everett, that some of the tractors would be like, why are we putting an Orange Line station where the new people are? What about the old people that have been there? So I get a lot of that in Everett, by the way. But it is something that's been talked about. It's just the investment isn't there right at the moment. I can tell you that. But we are pushing. That's like Plan B, our second step 2 of what we look at the transit options. But we're still hopeful on that piece, but not in time for the stadium to be open.
Simplemente quiero traducir muchas de las preguntas que hemos recibido de las personas aquí presentes. Se tratan sobre la transportación y cómo vamos a poder transportar a las personas que lleguen a ver al estadio, a ver juegos. El uso se espera que 80 días del año el equipo use 20 días y el resto de los días sería para conciertos en el estadio. Y entonces lo que ha recalcado aquí el senador y también yo es que estas son las rutas de autobuses, de transportación pública que estarán abiertas, y el caballero Edwin nos acaba de preguntar su interés por saber si se va a abrir alguna estación extra en la línea naranja del lado de Everett. Y lo que acaba de comentar pues, el senador es de que es un costo muy alto. No lo vemos exactamente en los planes inmediatos, pero lo que sí les podemos garantizar es de que por lo menos vamos a tratar lo más posible de tener la línea morada, que es el ferrocarril que ven aquí, el morado, extender eso a la ciudad de Everett para tener eso como un modo de transporte. Ese es un compromiso del casino en el cual piensan invertir $50 millones para poder abrir esa estación. Entonces, es esa combinación con la combinación de estas rutas de bus, unas que ya están existentes, y pues tener más frecuencia. Entonces, ese es el interés, porque solo van a haber 75 parqueos para carros en un estadio de 25.000 asientos. Así que pues el interés grande es la transportación pública, incluyendo también pues abrir la zona marítima.
Transportation.
Good evening. My name is Martin McAlpine. Just a very quick question that I'm sure is being thought about. But in looking at all of these access points, which I think are, again, are great, definitely a lot of thought as to the ways to get there. It looks on the maps that all of the kind of access points where the buses are, access from Assembly, it's a pretty decent walk to get there. And if we're talking about potentially not having any of the ride shares, having access up to the front, what about those in the community that don't have the ability to walk those distances to access that facility? Are we going to have stops that are close enough that those that aren't necessarily qualified for a handicap access, I would hope that the bulk of those parking spaces that are at the facility are going to be handicapped. But if they don't necessarily qualify for a handicap placard, are they still going to be able to get there comfortably, or are we going to take away a large access point for a fairly large segment of the population?
That's a great question, especially for moms, a lot of moms.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have looked into something like that, because that is a question that keeps popping up continuously about if you cannot walk these distances, how do you get there? So we are looking at exploring that. The 75 parking spots exclusively will be for handicap. There might be some other spots added to that, but that is the bulk of, that's pretty much why 75 spots. So there'll be plenty of access for handicap parking at the site.
But it seems like your question is for individuals
And
who
they're
do not
walking.
qualify.
Yeah, so
Who don't necessarily have that
Like a mom
placard.
with C-section.
Yeah, where you want to go to the stadium, and sorry, I'll talk a little louder. You want to go to the stadium, you want to see something, you don't have a handicap placard. Or there's times where we may have recently had a surgery and you're on crutches or in a walking boot, and I don't know how long that distance is from Assembly over to that stadium. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, the only time that you're going to be dropped off is the Civil Line extension. So all buses, essentially, on shuttles. But yeah, this is an issue that we've been talking about for a while. So there will be a plan in place for something like that, because I know that at the Everett meeting, this came up, the Charlestown meeting, this came up as well. So there's only
Thank you for that. We'll bring it back.
All right, I think we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, Senator, for coming and answering all the questions, and State Rep as well. I know this is just the beginning of the conversation, and we're all committed to continuing the discussion. But as I started, I do want to emphasize that Chelsea is very supportive of this project. We are excited about this project. We are excited about what is going to bring from a job standpoint, an economic development standpoint, and a tourism standpoint. This is going to be good for Chelsea. And we want to make sure that we are all supportive of this project going forward. Thank you.
I'm just going to say quickly, I would not have put my political capital involved in this. This has been a 4-year process. We've taken some hits. My team knows this. It's been a long road, but I feel very strongly that this is going to be an amazing project for Everett, for Chelsea, for Boston, for Charlestown. I know we're going to get this right, because I see what's happening here. Everything is lined up in a way where I feel very, very comfortable, not even comfortable. I'm putting everything on the line for this. 15 years in political office in the state senate, 6 years in the city council in Everett. And this project here is transformational. in so many different ways. And I'm excited about it, and I'm excited about the support we have in our surrounding communities, the people in Everett and in Charlestown as well. We will get this right, make sure Chelsea's at the table, make sure Chelsea's not getting left behind in any way. Chelsea will be there and be very happy with the outcome. And you'll have all of our kids and all of our families enjoying a facility right next door instead of having to go to Foxborough and enjoying a team there. So this is really something that we're excited about, and it can't come fast enough. But to Calvin's point, we want to make sure we get it. Calvin, yes, I'm calling you out, Calvin. That we get it right. This was not going to happen overnight. This is a long process, and you'll have a large say in what's going on.
And I'll add, I served 8 years in the city council, joined the State House in the past 2 terms, and it's been an honor to work alongside you, Senator, and to see your leadership. We're here, we're at a critical juncture now, and it's nothing, I can't think of doing it with a better partner, and also with great municipal leaders here who are advocating for the Chelsea residents and for making sure that we have a voice at the table. Así que les quiero agradecer a todos por estar aquí hoy. I want to thank everyone for being here today, for your insight, for your feedback, for your questions. Les agradezco a todos sus preguntas, sus inquietudes también. Y para mí ha sido un gran honor como diputada trabajar con el senador en este proyecto. Estamos muy cerca, es un momento crítico, pero esto no será posible sin pues la contribución y sin la alianza de los líderes municipales, incluyendo a nuestro gerente de la ciudad. Así que muchas gracias. Thank you all for being here today, and we will continue this conversation, hopefully once this whole arbitration situation settles. Muchísimas gracias.